Welcome to this year's 3-minute thesis competition, part of the Festival of Ideas. We are absolutely delighted to welcome you all here. And I can tell you, because I have the stats in front of me, that there are 332 of you out there. So thank you so much for joining us. You come from all over the globe, and that's the advantage of being able to do this online. We could spend so much time talking about the weirdness that has been 2020, but let's instead spend 90 minutes rejoicing in the excitement of brand new cutting edge research and celebrating the fantastic work that our PhD students are doing here. We hope that we can entertain you, educate you, and inform you this evening about some of the work that they're doing and inspire you to get involved with the university and with the local community if you're York based, and to give us a call or an email if you're out there elsewhere in the world. We would love to work with you. Now more than ever, we need to be collectively working on these big challenges. Now more than ever, we need to put our minds together and be creative, and be clever, and to think how we might do things differently. And our people this evening are going to tell us how to do that. My name is Karen Clegg. I head up the Research Excellence Training Team. It's a privilege to work at York and to work with our fantastic researchers. I'm going to take you through, by virtue of some slides now, a little bit of housekeeping, appropriate given that we're all in our houses, I feel. So I'm going to have a look at what might be available to you. So first of all, if your internet connection goes down, then try not to panic. You can rejoin with the link that you used to join in the first place. So bear with it. It is being recorded this evening, and so there will be plenty of opportunity to revisit the video at any point should you drop out, but we hope you'll come back to us. There's no Q&A function this evening, simply because there's a lot of you. We haven't got time to ask questions, and we want to give maximum exposure to our finalists in that sense. Our 3MT, our 3-minute thesis finalists, have rehearsed, and they've got their teeth in better than I have. They've rehearsed in their houses. They have probably done their 3-minute pitch in front of their friends and their family many, many times. Ordinarily, they would be doing this in an auditorium in York, and today you're going to see them here in front of you in your houses. Of course, the benefit is that you can replenish your glasses and nip to the bathroom whenever you need. So I think that's the housekeeping that I need to do. I'm going to hand you over with great pleasure and with extreme thanks to Greg Dyke. Now, Greg is a former Chancellor of the university. You may know him better as ex-Director General of the BBC. You may know him between the years of 2013 and 2016 as the chair of the Football Association. What you probably don't know is that he's a York University alumni, and he's currently chairing our Make It York campaign, of which we're extremely proud. So I'm going to hand over to Greg now to explain to you why he keeps coming back and why this is his third 3-minute thesis for us. Greg, over to you.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome to everybody. I'm really pleased to be here today as part of the York Festival of Ideas online. And I'm really pleased to be chairing the 3-minute thesis event for the third year running. This year, we will be asking no less than 11 PhD students at York to explain in 3 minutes or less what their research is about and what they hope to achieve with it. I like chairing this competition because I love the challenge it gives to the students. I love the idea that they have to explain succinctly and in a language that the rest of us can understand what they're actually doing. Because I don't think we should ever underestimate what a challenge that is for would-be academics. In my experience, most academics will never explain anything in 3 minutes when they can use an hour or two, and they will usually explain it in a language which is somewhat difficult for some of us. A few years back, my eldest daughter, who is now an academic in Sweden, she's a linguistics student, gave me a copy of her PhD to read. I did find it incomprehensible. So after last year's event, when I went back and found her, I said, look, could you explain your PhD in 3 minutes? She replied, dead easy. I can do it in one sentence. Why do some people finish other people's sentences? And I looked at it and I thought, that's 2 years' work in a 10,000 word dissertation, which she even got a distinction for. So it does that simplicity and clarity for you. Okay, let's get on with the event, and I'm handing you back to Karen to explain what's going to happen.
Okay, Greg, thank you. And as I say, thank you so much for coming back year after year to be part of this event. I'm going to share a few things with you now that will help you, I hope, get the maximum out of this evening. So I'm going to tell you about the criteria. I'm going to introduce you to the judges. I'm going to tell you about the prizes that our finalists are going to win. So I am going to tell you now about the judges. And again, I can't tell you how delighted and grateful we are to have various judges in front of us, or rather in the backstage, in the audience with you, in the comfort of their own homes. So I'm delighted to introduce you first to Professor Tom Stoneham. Tom is the current chair and dean, rather, of our York Graduate Research School. Tom's been doing this and being involved with the 3-minute thesis and all of the care, the policies, the procedures, and the background that goes on to support our students. And it's been an absolute pleasure to work with him over the last 4 years on that. So I'm now really pleased also to introduce you to Leo Köhler. Leo, or as I should say, Leonora, really, but she prefers Leo, so I think I can say that, is a professor in the Department of Anatomy and Embryology at the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands. She's a superb, utterly charismatic, utterly positive person, and it was such a delight to meet her last year when we worked together on a panel. She's been recognised this year with a Wijnand-Wijgen, and I'm sure I've slaughtered that pronunciation, Education Prize for her contribution to education this year. There's a lovely video that goes with her acceptance of that prize, whereby her PhD students just talk about the time and the energy that she has for them. So she brings to us both a scientific background and also a commitment that all of our judges share to the very best in creativity and research. Without further ado, then over to Professor Matthias Ruth. Matthias joined us very recently at the university and is Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research. He came from the University of Alberta from Canada to come and join us. And to his role, he brings a really multidisciplinary background, which spans across economics, biology, engineering, geography, and policy, as well as obviously that strategic vision. And it's great to have Matthias with us. I know he'll see us right in terms of making sure that the judging process considers all of those different multidisciplines. Over then to Professor Dr. Michael Quandt. Michael is Vice Rector for Internationalization and Knowledge Transfer at the University of Münster in Germany. Now, Münster is twinned as a city with the University of York, so we have a natural connection and a rich cultural heritage that we share and really luxuriate in. We have a lovely connection with the university and with the city. And in a couple of weeks' time, we're running a summer school with PhD students from the University of Münster. So we're really grateful to Michael for spending the time and for really enriching what we do, both at the university and within the city. Ellen Howells leads a major communication project at the moment with the National Trust. And so Ellen brings the lay person, the non-specialist person, expertise to this particular panel. It'll be Ellen, I'm sure, who is the person that says, but I'm not a specialist in this area, and I didn't understand it, or rather, they made it so easy for me to understand. And if you have those moments this evening as the audience where something really quite difficult and complex is brought to life through the communication and the expression that our finalists bring to their subject, then perhaps you want to be using your vote to support them, and more of that in a moment. But last and by no means least, William Trickey. He is, until tonight, until probably about another hour, Will, you're our reigning champion, our 3-minute thesis champion of last year, and was one of the finalists in the national UK, that is, 3MT competition last year. He makes the explanation of really quite complex science and nuclear fusion look easy. I'm not a scientist, I'm an educationalist by background, and even I understood nuclear fusion, as did my 12-year-old son. So hats off to Will. He set the bar last year, and everybody has a tough job this evening. So those are our judges. I hope you'll agree with me. They are an esteemed and if geographically dispersed at the moment, then what they bring together, as I say, is their collective energy and enthusiasm for research. The criterion then that you and they are to be judging against this evening are this. Firstly, the comprehension and the content. Do you understand what you're being told? Does it make sense to you? Was there a flow? Did it leave you going away wanting more? Secondly, their engagement and communication. Now, they're a little bit limited this evening because they're on screen and they're not live in front of you on a stage, so they can't pace the stage and they can't use their props in the way that perhaps they might have done. And I have to put my microphone down now because I'm not allowed props either. But did they engage you? Did they inspire you, as well as educating you? In other words, what was the X factor? Were they the one that you went, God, they're great? Are you clapping in your living room? Are you whooping in your kitchen when they finished? That's what we want to know. So those are the criterion then. People's Choice Award, I will explain a little bit more when you've heard from the finalists. It's going to be an online vote, and there are some rules to it. And you will have to bear with me while I explain those to make sure that everybody gets a fair deal and that you know what you're doing when you submit your vote. And that's why you need to listen really carefully to their presentations. So I'll lead you through the People's Choice, but effectively what's going to happen at the end of this evening is that there will be a first, second, and third place winner that our esteemed judging panel are going to choose, and then a People's Choice winner that you out there are going to decide live this evening. And we will see that on the screen. What else do I need to tell you? I need to tell you about the prizes. That's what I need to tell you. So first prize isn't going to walk away quite, but they are going to get a tap at the door, I suspect, from a well-known delivery van in the near future, delivering them a brand new sparkly iPad as fast as we can have that couriered to you. So that's the first choice winner. And then there's a range in decreasing amounts of Amazon vouchers available for the second and the third prize and the People's Choice winner. And by the beauty that is email, we will send through those Amazon vouchers to you for those lucky winners. Everybody gets a certificate of participation, and again, we will send that through you online, protecting everybody in the process. I think I'm done with the information that you need for the moment. And so what I will do is start the presentations. And here I am in the hands of our phenomenal AV team, and Michael in particular, and Steve out there, who are going to start the the 11 finalists that we've got for you this evening.
The coronavirus pandemic is the biggest global crisis of my lifetime. What it highlights is the importance of understanding our immune system. We know our immune systems are all about balance. A strong immune system is essential for clearing infections. However, if our immune system goes too far and acts too strongly, this can lead to severe and life-threatening disease. So what can we do to keep our immune system in check to help fight infections? T cells are the star players of our immune system. Their job is to conduct all the cells of the immune system like an orchestra by giving them either on or off instructions in order to start and stop the immune response. It is essential to understand how T cells give these instructions in order to find new drugs to treat infections. But where is best to look? Well, for a long time, scientists have focused their research on understanding proteins. These are the building blocks of our bodies. You might be surprised if I tell you that only 2% of our DNA makes proteins. The other, 98%, is known as non-coding DNA. But for many years, this was simply dismissed as junk DNA. More recently, scientists have discovered that if non-coding DNA goes wrong and mutates, this can be detrimental to our health. So what other secrets does non-coding DNA hold, and how can we use them to our advantage? My PhD is focused on understanding how non-coding DNA works in T cells, and how we can use this knowledge to regulate the on and off signals of the immune system. In our lab, we have found in experimental models of malaria, we can control the severity of disease, simply by changing the so-called junk DNA in T cells. I hope I have persuaded you that non-coding DNA is in fact important, functional, useful, the opposite of junk. While in the middle of the global coronavirus pandemic, understanding our immune system is more important than ever before. I truly believe that by continuing to study non-coding DNA, we will uncover a treasure trove of new treatments to fight infections. Thank you.
Wow, and I'm so sorry. What the person that you've just been inspired and enthralled by is Katie West, and her title was The Junk Revolution. Katie's from our Department of Biology, and a tough start. Just hats off. Thank you very much, Katie. Our next finalist is Rhian Addison. Her title is Indoor Spaces for Outdoor Minds, Landscapes Artist Studios in London. And Rhian is from the History of Art.
Imagine you are standing in an art gallery surrounded by landscape paintings from the 18th and 19th centuries. These works typically depict idyllic scenes of the British countryside. But where do you think they were created? Do you imagine an artist painting in a field? Or would it surprise you to know that these works were typically painted in a city? As an art curator, I believe it is important to question where and how a work was created so that you, the viewer, can relate to the artist on a human level. My research explores the irony that rural landscapes were being painted in urban London. The outside world was being created within the limits of a room. What were these spaces like? Where were these studios situated? How did artists adapt them for landscape painting, and how did the spaces impact on the landscape paintings themselves? To locate these studios, I created a database and digital map of landscape artists' addresses. The addresses were listed in hundreds of exhibition catalogues and are now the red markers on the map. Analysis revealed huge numbers compared to previous understandings. Over 2,700 artists were painting landscapes in London at over 6,500 addresses. That is 6,500 potential studios lost to history. A great advantage of these technologies is that they are democratic. Female artists are placed on an equal footing to their male counterparts, writing them back into art history. But what do these technologies contribute to analysing a painting? This is a self-portrait of the landscape artist George Arnold seated in his studio, which is marked in green on the map, and is only 500 metres from where King's Cross Station now stands. The map places Arnold's studio in context with other artists and institutions. We can trace the highs and lows of his career according to the areas in which he was living, and, most significantly, we can use it to understand Arnold's accessibility to rural locations where he would have gathered materials for his paintings. Applying these combined technologies is groundbreaking to art history, as we're able to analyse vast amounts of data to reveal a forgotten artistic community. The location, the space, and how it was used can tell us how some artists became icons of British art, or, for the majority, they fell into obscurity. Ultimately, this research provides a new context for the creation of landscape painting and will change the way you experience the work. So once again, you're standing in the art gallery. Imagine all of the factors which contributed to the creation of a landscape painting. It was painted in central London, in a studio which may not have had any windows, by an artist who was fighting for public attention. Has your understanding of landscape painting changed?
You've just been listening to Rhiannon Addison, again enthralling and just leaving my heartbeat rating just a little bit higher than it was, given that she's only leaving 6 seconds for breathing space. I should tell you, if they go over 3 minutes, they are instantly disqualified. So keeping your eye on that clock is really important. So well done, Rhiannon. Good job. We're going to change tack slightly now from history of art to physics. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Robert Davis. Robert's title is Building Suns on Earth, Solving the Turbulence Problem. Over to you, Robert. Thank you.
Isn't the sun great? It sits there across the vast gulf of space, reliably producing huge amounts of energy, as it has done for billions of years. Would it not be incredible if we could reproduce the sun on Earth, allowing us to meet our energy needs without harming the environment? Well, decades of experimentation have shown we can harness the solar process, but only if we can master one of the most complex, fundamental problems in nature, the problem of turbulence. You see, to make energy, we have to put some gas fuel inside a box, and then heat it to the temperature of the sun, millions of degrees. And to avoid melting the box, the gas is suspended in midair using powerful magnets. Here is a schematic picture. The box is about the size of a house, and inside the gas is suspended, trapped inside an invisible magnetic bottle. But unfortunately, it doesn't just sit still. No. Instead, it churns, eddies, and vortexes around in ways we don't really understand. We call this turbulence, and it leads to super hot gas leaking out of the bottle. This is a bit of a problem, as it can cause the box to melt. Is there a solution? Well, first, we need to find out why the turbulence is happening. And that's where I come in. I try to make sense of what's going on by simulating the gas using powerful computers. I start by simulating a calm, peaceful gas in a magnetic bottle. I then evolve it in time to see what happens. What happens is that small ripples and disturbances spontaneously form in the gas. They rapidly grow, and after less than a millisecond, they explode into the tumultuous behaviour we see in real life. These initial disturbances are like the fingerprints of turbulence, and they help us to make sense of the chaotic, complex motions of the gas. But there's more. because using these simulations, I can experiment with different configurations. So what happens if we make the magnets stronger or weaker? What if we change the shape of the magnetic bottle? Will this lead to more gas leaking out or less? So by asking the question, what causes turbulence, I hope to find ways in which we can control it, allowing us to trap super hot fuel inside invisible magnetic bottles. This lets us ask the really big question, can we build a sun on Earth? And I believe the answer is yes. Thank you.
Robert, you are testing my heart rate, aren't you, really? Thank you so much for that fascinating work. So from physics to health sciences, and with great pleasure, I'm going to hand you over to Zainab Kidwai. Zainab's title is Can We Catch It Before It's Cancer?
I'm really sorry to say this, but I'm afraid your tests have come back positive. You have got oral cancer. As a dentist, these are some of the most gut-wrenching words that we can ever say to someone. And the hardest part is telling them that their disease has progressed and it's too late for a full recovery. Every year, 500,000 people get diagnosed with oral cancer globally. Majority of them are the poor and the vulnerable living in South Asian countries, where it is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths in men. Research has shown that early detection while the disease is still in its precancerous stage is the key to better disease outcomes. It saves money and it saves lives. So what is stopping these people from getting the help they need to catch it before it's cancer? Firstly, the cost of attending dental services is beyond the reach of many people. Secondly, there simply aren't enough dentists. There are places in India where there is one dentist to look after 250,000 people. So is there anything we can do to help? Well, through my research, I aim to bring low-cost cancer screening services to these communities. Services that don't rely on dentists but can be delivered by any non-specialist healthcare worker. How am I going to do it, you ask? Well, I am working with head and neck cancer experts from all over the world to develop really simple step-by-step guidance on detecting oral precancers using just a mouth mirror, tweezers, and an ordinary torchlight. This toolkit will be field tested with community health workers in rural parts of Uttar Pradesh in India. So who are these community health workers? There are a variety of health aides who are selected, trained, and work for the communities that they come from and bridge the gap between their community and the local health services. These community health workers will be trained to screen tobacco users, not in a dental clinic with all the fancy equipment, but in a local, easily accessible setting within their community. This 5-minute screening process tackles two big challenges. It brings low-cost cancer detection services to these communities for as little as £2 per person, and it allows for task shifting from a dentist to a lay health worker. If there is anything that we can learn from this ongoing pandemic, it is that timely testing can mean a difference between life and death, more so in the poor and the marginalized. With this research, basic life-saving care can finally become a possibility for these communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very pertinent in the situation in which we find ourselves at the moment. So very well done to Zainab. Okay, allow me to take you back and lead you towards the labs of biology now and introduce you to Alexander Setchfield. Alexander's title is Crop Waste to Bug Grub, Feeding the Future with Insects.
Imagine this. 83 million more people on our planet every year for the next 30 years. That's equivalent to Germany's entire population every year. By 2050, 9.8 billion people. How do we feed such a huge population? We need to produce more food in the next 30 years than we ever have before in human history. Meat and fish demand will double, but their production heavily reduces biodiversity, largely due to growing soybean, our main current source of animal feed. We obliterate vast glades of forest. We pollute soil and rivers by over-application of chemical fertiliser. Now this simply can't continue, though demand must be met by sustainable supply. But how? My research, alongside industry collaborators at Ferroscience, may provide a circular solution. Imagine if we could turn agricultural crop waste, wheat straw for example, into animal feed and fertiliser to improve crop yield. From waste to feed and food. Crop waste, it's like an Egyptian tomb. Its treasures, sugars in this case, are locked up in an interwoven network of biological structures. They're sealed inside, difficult to access. But some particularly ingenious fungi and bacteria have actually evolved the ability to access the valuable sugars. I use their extraordinary ability to digest crop waste, to break it open, to expose those sugars, and study how they're able to do this. What mechanisms do they use? Can we even improve them? I then feed this digested crop waste to insect larvae and study how they grow. Already, I've shown that they do grow, and that subtle tweaks to the process can improve this. Now, my quest is to further improve their growth. Though you might wonder, why insect larvae? Well, they're absolutely brimming with protein, perfect animal feed, and any waste generated by the larvae, well, that can be used as natural fertiliser to improve crop yield from where the crop waste originated, from waste to feed and food, a truly circular solution. Now, the ability to repurpose any crop waste in this way would transform society. Our reliance on soybean will be significantly reduced, allowing biodiversity to thrive once again. Our farmers, those in York, the UK, globally, all could produce high quality meat, fish and fertiliser in a truly sustainable way whilst reducing waste. From waste to feed and food. Thank you.
Alexander, thank you so much for that. You can see the relevance to our society and to the really big issues that we're all facing about how do we feed, how do we keep up our health, etc., etc. Let me move you to archaeology now. So dust off your brushes and let's move in to the Herculean world. So I'm handing you over with great pleasure now to Sylvia Sonchin. Sylvia's title is Diet at 79 AD Herculaneum, a Metabolic Approach. Thanks, Sylvia.
Food has a central role in our life. Food is the fuel that allows us to accomplish any small or big action in a day and longer-term achievements. However, as humans, food is also much more than a biological necessity, and we can learn a lot about who we are when we look at what we eat. Let's travel back in time. We are in 79 AD Herculaneum, a vibrant town of the Roman Empire located in the Bay of Naples, Italy. In that period, the area was experiencing a rapid economic growth. There was an increase of urban production, the trade networks with the rest of the empire were intensified, and the countryside was flourishing. But then, that year, Mount Vesuvius erupted, ending the prosperity of the town forever. Beyond the tragedy, today, with my PhD, I have the exceptional opportunity to investigate the diet of people from Herculaneum by directly looking into their bones. And how do I do this? Well, in our bones, there is a protein, collagen. Collagen is composed of many tiny bricks, the amino acids. Each amino acid has specific chemical signatures, the isotopes, and the isotopes travel all the way from the food we eat to our body by going through a variety of chemical reactions. You might have heard about it. is called metabolism. By statistically elaborating the isotopic values of the amino acids, looking at their metabolic reactions, we are finding that people from Herculaneum were consuming a lot of cereals, but also a surprisingly large amount of animal products and marine fish. Meat and fish were not among the cheapest items in a typical Roman market. So why were they consumed so frequently? Maybe for the same reason why we can go to a supermarket today and we can afford these same products. An increase in production, as seen in 79 AD Herculaneum, results in a reduction in price. 79 AD Herculaneum might seem a very faraway reality, but is it really? Thousands of years have passed, but we can still learn a lot about who we are when we look at what we eat. Tonight, in front of your dinner, start wondering, why did I go for this food instead of something else? Is the world I'm living in directing my food preferences in any way? And when did that start? Don't be surprised if you will discover that there's a very old story behind it. Thank you.
Wow, 1 second to go. Sylvia, thank you. Really fascinating work, digging up what we perhaps need to understand about our diet. I'm going to give you just a bit of breathing space here for a moment, and to remind you that we've seen 6 of our 11 finalists so far. I want to remind you of the 6 because this is going to be important when you place your vote for People's Choice, because the poll is set in 2 separate groups. So you've just seen group 1. You've seen Katie West on the Junk Revolution. You've seen Rianne Addison on Indoor Spaces for Outdoor Minds. You've seen Robert Davies on Building Suns on Earth. Zanab Kidway on Can We Catch It Before It's Cancer. Alexander Setchfield on Crop Waste to Bug Grub. I do struggle with that, Alexander. And Sylvia Sonchin on Diet at 79 AD Herculaneum. So those are the 6 that you've heard so far. You know who you've been inspired by. Maybe make a few notes now. Top up your glass or the teapot or whatever you've got handily in front of you. Because we're going to move now to the second batch, the second set of our finalists this evening. I'm just going to give you a moment there because it strikes me that not only do you need a breather, but I need a breather. And I'm looking out of the window and I'm seeing the rain coming down, and I'm looking at the phenomenal number of people here. There are 409 of you out there, which is kind of making me vaguely terrified and hugely, hugely proud. Thank you so much for joining us and supporting our finalists and supporting just great research, for supporting the very best of cutting edge research, and for being engaged and for wanting to be part of building and creating a new society and a new way of being. We get to restart and reboot the way that we are now, sitting in our own living rooms and working with people like our finalists. Without further ado then, I'm going to take you into group 2, our second set of finalists. And it gives me really great pleasure to introduce you to our first finalist from the Department of Theatre, Film, Television and Interactive Media. That's the only time I'm going to say that because it's far too long. So let me introduce you to Rosamund Portas. Rosamund's title then is Extinction Studies, Imagining a World Without Bees.
Many of you here today will have heard the news that bees are dying. Bees' decline first captured our attention in the mid-2000s, with the arrival of a syndrome that caused honeybees to begin mysteriously disappearing from their hives. In the years following this crisis, the loss of bees sustained public attention, and today, we know that bees are threatened for a number of reasons. These include, but are not limited to, the impacts of climate change, the loss of wildflower habitats, and the global spread of diseases and parasites. Simultaneously, as people have become increasingly concerned about environmental issues, environmentally focused creative projects have begun to take a central role in the creative arts sector. Accordingly, the world has been enriched by a vast number of bee-inspired creative projects. Some of these are exampled on my slide, such as the comical children's show titled Me and My Bee, or the hive-like installation created by the artist Wolfgang Buttress. My research responds to this influx of creativity, asking how and why has the loss of bees inspired these creative projects, and to what extent might these creative projects actually help shape bees' futures? To guide my study, I root my work within an emerging genre called Extinction Studies. Extinction Studies advocates that, as we enter into the sixth mass extinction, we need to tell stories which explore the social, cultural, and ecological dimensions of extinction processes. By embracing this approach in my own work, I therefore tell a story which considers how the loss of bees has been responded to through creativity. To tell this story, I interviewed artists who have been inspired to address the decline of bees through their work, learning about their motivations, their intentions, and their experiences. My research results in a number of key findings. Firstly, I argue that bees are considered worthy of grief. Due to the critical role that bees play in our diets, our environments, our stories and traditions, their ongoing loss has been met with alarm, distress and care. Secondly, I show that bees are a valuable starting point for environmental communications. I show that because people care about bees, creative projects inspired by this subject are useful for engaging people with environmental conversations. Thirdly, I argue for the value of creativity. I show that creative projects are vital for inspiring empathy and action for threatened non-human species. I further suggest that these three key findings speak to how extinction processes are as much matters of society and culture as they are of biology and ecology. Finally, I advocate for the expansion of research rooted in the extinction studies genre. I suggest that work inspired by this approach opens up critical questions about our role in and responsibility for the lives of lost or dying non-human species.
Rosamond, thank you. So moving now to our second finalist from theatre, film, television and interactive media. It's a real pleasure to introduce you to Jo Horsey, and Jo's title is Uncovering Documentaries Metaphors.
By which metaphors do you live your life? Have things been a bit up and down for you recently? How have you been spending your time? What are you looking forward to? We're always speaking in metaphors, but far beyond a figure of speech, metaphors are actually fundamental to how we think. The essence of metaphor is understanding and experiencing one kind of thing in terms of another. Concepts like emotion, time, and even life itself are ideas we partially grasp metaphorically through physical experiences. When we think of metaphors in this way, we start to see them everywhere, in how we communicate and how the world communicates with us. Now, my real interest is documentary. I'm fascinated by how documentaries mould and manipulate the real world into what we see on screen. By analysing the work of some of the world's most influential documentary filmmakers, my research aims to find out just how important the role of metaphor is in that process. In other words, I spend my time watching a lot of films and thinking about them. My slide includes perhaps documentary cinema's most iconic visual metaphor from Dziga Vertov's great masterpiece, Man with a Movie Camera. With this image, he invites us to see his camera as an eye and his eye as a camera, a merging of images which can be read in either direction. Metaphor permeates documentary in complex and profound ways, but no one's talking about it. It's understandable. We think of documentaries as sincere, sober, and serious. Metaphor, on the other hand, we often think of as something expressive, poetic, or decorative. And there's a tension there, or a friction, where documentary's unique attitude towards its truth claims meets this concept, metaphor, which is essentially a lie we tell about something in order to help us understand it in a different way. With the dominance of streaming services like Netflix, documentary is now a more influential genre than ever before in helping us to comprehend our world and ourselves. At a time where truth is in a particularly precarious position, understanding how documentaries communicate meaning through metaphor is now more important than ever. The impact of my research will be both a radical new way of understanding what documentary is and a new model of metaphor, illuminating an almost entirely unexplored area within the field. This contributes to a much broader debate about how we as humans interpret meaning in all forms of communication, and how deeply embedded metaphors shape and are shaped by our experience of reality. Thank you.
Joe, thank you. Let's move on then to language and linguistic science. And let's listen with enthusiasm and intrigue to Justin Lowe. And Justin's title is Your Voice, Ta Voix, Comparing Voices Across Languages.
Remember how we used to get phone calls that sounded like this? Hello, old friend, remember me? You might ask yourself, do I recognize that voice? Is that who I think it is? Every day, you and I are comparing voices. Someone calling from behind, on the phone, on Zoom. Most of the time, making a mistake is not a big deal. But if we are dealing with voice evidence in a police investigation, the consequences can be much more severe. When we come across mysterious voices like this, I want to find out if it's the police suspect or somebody else. Forensic phoneticians, like myself, can come in to analyze their voices, just like how other scientists compare DNA or shoe prints. We pick out all the linguistic and phonetic clues, vowels, consonants, pitch, and so on. But what if the voices we have to compare aren't even speaking in the same language? That's where it gets really tricky, but it's not as uncommon as you might think. Around us, around the world, the majority of people are bilingual. They often switch between the languages they know, and many of those voice characteristics could change according to the language. You could easily get a mysterious phone call in English, but end up with a suspect who swore they only spoke French. Can we still reliably compare those voices? That's what I want to find out. Can we compare oranges with apples, or in this case, oranges with orange? What I do is test how well different features in the voice work across language barriers to tell speakers apart. Take the S sound as an example. Some people have a lower S, like S. Others have a higher, hissier S. In a database of over 100 people who speak both English and French, I measure how similar each person's S's are with themselves and with all the other speakers. How accurately can we tell them apart? As a baseline, I compare speech in the same language, English with English, French with French. But crucially, I also do the same across the two languages, English with French and vice versa. And by comparing the error rates, I can build up a picture of how useful these features can be in cross-language comparison. For forensic experts, this could mean more reliable evidence when it comes to all these bilingual speakers, so the court can count on us in a much broader range of cases. But the implications go beyond the courtroom. Technologies that rely on voice recognition, like Siri, Alexa, mobile banking, still have a long way to go when it comes to dealing well with bilingual voices. And as they become increasingly widespread and indispensable in our lives, a better understanding of what makes bilingual voices similar can make an important difference to fairness and justice, both in the court and beyond.
Justin, thank you. Just the potential to use some of this research and to really enhance the way that society functions just never fails to amaze me and impress me. So, Justin, thank you so much for that. We're in our virtual classroom at the moment, or that's how it feels. So walk with me down the corridor, leaving education, language and linguistic science, and come with me to environment and geography, because Katie Valentine, she's talking about the hidden microbial world of our plastic waste, and it's going to be fascinating. Here she is.
In the 3 minutes that I'm talking to you today, 7 tonnes of plastic waste will flow through our world's rivers out into our oceans. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the threat that plastic poses for our wildlife. In the last year alone, we've seen reports in the news of plastic killing 500,000 hermit crabs. We've seen seals trapped with plastic around their necks, and reports of hose pipes and plastic bags stuck in the stomach of animals. Despite all this awareness of the problem though, to tackle these issues, a lot of work is still needed to understand what makes this plastic so dangerous. When plastic finds its way into rivers or the ocean, thousands of microscopic bugs, like those you can see on my slide, attach onto the plastic surface, and we refer to these tiny bugs as microbes. Now, these microbes form a living, breathing, miniature world on the surface of the plastic, and they have the potential to alter how dangerous the plastic is for certain animals. Unfortunately though, these hidden microbes on plastic are relatively underexplored, especially in freshwater rivers. Because of this then, the aim of my research is to gain a better understanding of the microbes that attach to plastic in UK rivers, and to figure out how these microbes might enhance, or maybe even reduce the harmful effects of plastic on freshwater animals. To do this, I studied the different microbes that had attached to small pieces of plastic bags that I'd put in a local river for several weeks. What I found was that the type and the number of microbes that were on the plastic was dependent on the type of material the plastic was made from and how long it had been in the river. What this means then is that an old crisp packet, for example, that's been in the river for a couple of days, is likely to have a different collection of microbes on it than, say, an old plastic bottle that's been in there for a few months. I also found that these microbes on the plastic were producing a chemical, which a lot of animals associate with their natural food, meaning that animals could be likely to mistake this plastic for a tasty nutritional snack, which it definitely isn't. Understanding what makes plastic so dangerous is a fundamental step for protecting the future of our rivers. So to prevent fish ending up with a belly full of plastic, or ducks with their beaks clamped shut with old bottle rings, we need to continue exploring these weird and complex microbes that attach to our plastic waste. We also need to think more carefully about the plastic in our own lives and where it might eventually end up. Could that plastic straw in your cocktail or that old juice carton end up floating down a river? And if it does, could it actually be more dangerous than first meets the eye?
Katie, thank you. Again, a call to arms there for all of us, I think. Change our behaviour, change our mindset. We've got a lot of thinking to do at the moment, haven't we? As a collective, responsible group of people who have our futures to consider. However, leaving the microbial world behind and moving again to education, language and linguistic science, the last but by no means least of our finalists, Raichi Chu, and her title is Music to Your Ears, Words to Mine.
Ma, 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 ma. To most of you in this audience, perhaps what I just said sounds like the word ma in a sing-song voice. Or it could be music to your ears. Any Mandarin speakers among you will know I said the words mother, hemp, horse, and scold. They were all different words, not just music. This music is known in linguistics as tone. And you know what? Tone languages are actually the majority. They make up 70% of languages in the world, including Fawn, Thai, and Mandarin. Tone plays a part in differentiating between words. Depending on the tone you say a word in, it will mean completely different things, which, as you can imagine, can make for some great puns and jokes. For example, in Mandarin, 我要睡觉 means I want to sleep. The same syllables in different tone, 我要水饺 means I want dumplings. When we first learn words as children, for most languages, a word is made up of one or more syllables. For tone languages, there are the syllables plus tone. So how did I, at age 2, and other children exposed to Mandarin, learn the language? How do children listen to the weird and wonderful sounds around them and learn how to say them? Which part of the word stood out to us more? Was it the syllables or tone? To try to find out, I played a game with 20 bilingual 2-year-olds learning Mandarin in Singapore. The game was called Say the Nonsense Word You Hear, and I video recorded their responses. Having these weird and wonderful nonsense made-up words mimics real life, as children are always hearing things they've never heard of before and have to learn how to say them. This way, I could also test which was easier to repeat. Easy or difficult syllables, easy or difficult tones, or a mix of the two. As expected, words which are easy on both counts were said the most accurately, and difficult ones least accurately. Words like me and you are much easier to say than challenging ones like empty disestablishmentarianism. What's interesting were the mixed conditions. Those with easy tones were said more accurately regardless of ease of syllable. The easy tones really grabbed the children's attention. The way children learn is amazing, isn't it? We throw them into any language environment and poof, they are tuned to the characteristics, in this case, musical characteristics if they are important in the language. What's been studied has mostly been on non-tone Indo-European languages. My research provides additional insight into one of the most widely spoken musical languages in the world, Mandarin, and how parents and teachers can think up fun ways to teach Mandarin to their children. The music in tone languages gives rise to meaning. It is more than just a melody.
Rachie, thank you very much. And that concludes our 11 finalists. I hope you'll agree with me, they were sensational. Who knew that the magic that they can create in their own bedrooms and their own kitchens? So thank you, and a virtual round of applause from me and the other 400 people out there. Well done, guys. Really great job. Okay. So the next part of this evening then is to do some scoring, to do some marking and some grading, which as an educationalist is my favourite activity. I was reminded, however, that I'd forgotten to tell you about the rules, and I'm delighted to say that having seen all 11 of them, I can tell you that they comply with them. You will be able to see that our finalists were not allowed anything other than a static slide. No transitions, no animations, etc. No electronic media, so they couldn't have any videos or sound files. As I demonstrated earlier, they're not allowed any props or costume changes. Disqualification after 3 minutes. Thankfully, none of them did that. No poems or songs, although obviously Rachie is allowed her melody. The decision of the adjudicating panel and our judging panel is final. However, given that this is online, there is no judging on the video or the recording, given that this is the situation that we're in. So the judging will focus entirely on those two criterion around content and around communication and engagement. With that in mind, then, I'm going to invite you now as the audience to place your votes and to cogitate and ruminate on the fascinating things that you've heard this evening from our 11 finalists. So the People's Choice vote will close in about 10 minutes' time. So I've got about a minute to tell you how this is going to work, and I'll try and do this as accurately as I can. If you're right-handed, take your mouse in your right hand. If you're left-handed, take the mouse in your left hand. You will see a scroll bar in front of you. On the right-hand side, there's a grey scroll bar. That will enable you to see the entire of the score sheet there. I've been taking pains to tell you that you've seen people in two sections. So in the first section, you will see our first 6 finalists. In the second section, you'll see the other 5. You may only vote for one person. If you're answering in section 2, please say, I answered in the other section in section 1, and vice versa. I hope that makes sense. I can see the votes already coming in. As soon as you've placed your vote, it will disappear off your screen. and Michael will close that down. So while that's all happening, it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome back Greg Dyke, Chancellor, and obviously with his experience with the Football Association and as Director General of the BBC. Greg is going to inspire and I'm sure entertain you on the topic of communication more generally. So Greg, over to you for 10 minutes and then we'll come back for both the judges and the People's Choice winners. Thank you. Over to you, Greg.
Karen, thank you. I love this bit really because this is, I'm really irrelevant. My job is to, the judges disappear and I'm left to fill for 10 minutes. Now, someone who spent most of his life in television, let me tell you, filling is often an art for live presenters. I don't know how many remember the famous interview between Jeremy Paxman and Michael Howard. Michael Howard, unfortunately, they'd lost the next section, so they just kept shouting down Paxman's ear, Phil, Phil. And in the end, he asked the same question 18 times. And I think he won an RTS award for it. So that's life. Now, normally I chat for a bit, then ask the audience for questions. But of course, this year I'm not able to do that. So I've got to speak for 10. Now, in the first year I did this, I was asked to describe my ideas for a PhD. I just stopped being the chair of the Football Association, so I spent over 3 minutes explaining, I did actually, I think about 10 minutes, explaining the research I wanted to do, which I believe would show that Premier League clubs mistreated hundreds of young footballers each year, kids who had often been with them since the age of 7 or 8, who were dumped in their teens and left really for nothing. Afterwards, I was flattered when one of the academics actually asked me, would I really like to do that as a PhD? Very flattering, but I think I'm beyond that at my age. So what's happened since I was here last year? Well, I've become chair, as Karen told you earlier, of an organisation called Make It Happen, which is which is called Make It York, the city's business development and destination marketing organisation. When I was asked to do it I said to my wife, what do you think? And she said, yeah, go on, you really like York, you should do it. And that's really, to answer Karen's question, why I keep coming back. I was there as a student in my 20s. I was there for 11 years as Chancellor, and I'm now back doing this. What's weird about it, it's a job I only started in January, and things started pretty well. In my first month, there was... we learned from the Sunday Times that the House of Lords might be moving to York. I read that and I thought, well, if that happens, job done, really. You know, it'll so transform York. Whether it is, we don't know. And then in the third month, the government committed to help fund the infrastructure of a massive development called York Central, which is on old railway land, which again was to be is important for the future of York. And I thought, well, we're doing all right. So far, so good. And then, of course, disaster struck. By the end of the fourth month, there was hardly a tourist left in the city. And I'm chair of the tourist organisation. And dozens of businesses were closed due to COVID-19. I had a real impact. It was an interesting 4 months in a new role. But if I was looking for a PhD subject this year, I'd look at the impact of COVID-19 on a city like York, and in particular on the tourist industry. I chaired the opening session of this year's Festival of Ideas, which was entitled Roadmap to Recovery, York in a Post-COVID World. And in the limited research I did for the opening, I came across some pretty scary stats produced by the York and North Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership, which in short suggested that COVID could result in wholesale unemployment in the York and North Yorkshire region, mainly, but not exclusively, in the areas of tourism and hospitality. Now, I think it would be fascinating to do a live PhD, watching and analysing the figures as they go along and trying to understand what was happening, why, and the effort that are being made currently to counter that trend. I'd also want to know what initiatives from public bodies helped counter the trend and which made no difference. Because I can't help feeling we're living through the equivalent of the phony war. Thousands of people are currently unemployed as a result of the pandemic, but because they are furloughed and are receiving decent benefits, we don't yet understand the crisis we could be facing when the furlough scheme comes to an end. Now, it's pretty gloomy stuff, and of course, there are advantages. We have learned things in COVID-19. We've learned a new verb, to furlough. Who'd heard of furlough until this started? We've all learned about social distancing. And I learned only last week that to have social distancing on LNER, you can only use one seat in 6. And finally, on the telly, we've seen, and I think this is the interesting thing about communication, we've suddenly seen the inside of hundreds of people's homes, and realised that when they're in the privacy of their own home, most men do tend to dress like Dominic Cummings. The point of difference, of course, he does it in public, but it is fascinating. When you watch people being interviewed in their own home, you somehow get a feeling about them. I mean, there seems to be an awful lot who sit in front of a set of books that I don't think have been taken off the shelves for 20 years, but suddenly they reflect what the person is. Now, if you watched the opening of the festival last week, you'd have heard these semi-jokes before, but I've got 10 minutes to fill. And I did say I thought this year the presentations were brilliant. I thought, you really did feel these people knew how to communicate it. And I did understand every one of them. Now, what Karen wanted me to talk about was communication and how important it is in today's world, and particular at a time of crisis. In truth, my own experience as someone who did some pretty interesting jobs and as a leader was that it was all about communication. That leading organizations, the single most important factor is to be able to communicate both with the people in your organization and the people outside, but particularly the people in an organization. When I left the BBC in quite difficult circumstances, a lot of my staff took to the streets to protest against me going. And I think that was because I'd spent the 4 years I was there trying to communicate effectively with them, which is, I think, what makes organizations work or what makes them don't work. I was quite interested when Charlie Jeffrey turned up as the new Vice Chancellor at York. He suddenly did what I thought was a brilliant lecture, communicating what it meant to him and what York, and linking the York University he wants with the university, with the principles of the university when it first started. So I think, I don't think you can underestimate how important communication is in any organization. And that does mean clarity. That does mean using a language that everybody understands and not a language only a few understand. Now, if you talk about things like the BBC, of course, the BBC is all about communicating. And the BBC gets, I think, an undue amount of criticism, partly because it's the national broadcaster, but also because politicians see it to an extent as theirs. So if the BBC gets something wrong, which it does at times, as all broadcasters do, they get more flack than most. I always remember at the time I left over a big bust up over our coverage of the post the Iraq War, Jon Snow saying to me, I've been through all this stuff, and I've got to tell you, if we did that on Channel 4 News, we would not get the sort of attack that you're getting at the BBC. And I think that's true. I think the BBC is vulnerable to attacks from politicians, because politicians think it's theirs and think somehow it belongs to government, which of course it doesn't. The BBC belongs to us, belongs to the people. But it has been quite interesting, I think, during COVID, to see how the BBC is almost coming to, faced with a government that was clearly going to be hostile to the BBC, how it's coming to its own, how people have turned to it as they've always turned to the BBC at times of crisis. So I think what we've seen in COVID-19 and in this whole time is the value the BBC adds to our culture and our society. Now, of course, the FA, when I was chairman of the FA, communication there is very different, because, I mean, the average newspaper carries probably 8 pages about football every day. And in all truth, there is not 8 pages worth to report. And therefore, things that are trivial get reported quite regularly. I remember Roy Hodgson, when he was manager of England, complaining about it all the time. But the one thing you realise from that is it's a waste of time trying to bury stories. It's a waste of time trying, as all politicians, all governments do, it's a waste of time trying to bury stories. You just need to be upfront and communicate effectively with people and with the public, with your staff, and if you're in a commercial organisation, with your customers. Communication really matters, and that's why I think this this whole 3-minute challenge is so effective, because it basically says what you're doing is real, what you're doing is important, what you're doing matters, and obviously requires a great deal of research, but you have to be able to explain it quickly and effectively to people who've only got a limited amount of time and who are not specialists in your field. They don't understand it. And therefore, that's what I thought of all of those today. I thought that is really, I thought it was a very impressive set of presentations. So well done. Now, I think it's time for me to hand back to Professor Tom Stoneham, the Dean of the Graduate Research School, who is going to announce the winners and present the awards. But I'm assuming he's there because I can't see him. Yep, there he is. Tom, over to you.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you very much, everyone in the audience, for this being here today. As Karen pointed out, we've had a fantastically large audience, over 400, and those were 11 great presentations. It's my 5th year of judging the 3-minute thesis here at York, and the overall quality of the presentations just gets better and better every year. I'm sure you'll agree with me that every single one of those presentations we've just watched clearly communicated exciting research in an engaging and entertaining manner. All the speakers clearly have great futures, great futures as researchers and communicators, and deciding between them was incredibly challenging for the 6 judges tonight. But we were given a job and we had to do it. Of course, we wish we could have just given everyone first prize, but that's not the way first, second, third works. So it's over to me now to announce the prize winners, and I'm going to go in reverse order. So in 3rd place, the 3rd place prize went to a presentation which used real-life examples to successfully illustrate the relevance and importance of research in a highly specialist field. It had content that was easy to understand and delivered with clear enthusiasm and verve. So the prize there goes to Justin Lowe for Your Voice, Ta Voix, comparing voices across languages. Justin, are you able to join us?
Yep.
You're there.
Hi.
Excellent. Congratulations, Justin. And that was excellent presentation. So
Thank you.
We'll all give you virtual applause.
Thank you.
Excellent. And so on to 2nd place. And this was for a presentation which was delivered with excellent style and clarity, and even managed to make us laugh. It provided a fascinating insight to the experimental approach and certainly left us wanting to find out more. In second place, Ray Chi Chu for Music to Your Ears, Words to Mine.
Hi.
Hello, Ray. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So we can all give you virtual applause for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we come to the big reveal. In first place, the judges chose a presentation which had a powerful opening and kept the audience gripped throughout with exceptional storytelling and clear scientific communication. It convinced us of the importance of this research and demonstrated the heart and passion behind achieving this scientific goal. So first place goes to Zainab Kidway. Can we catch it before it's Zainab?
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you.
Congratulations.
The excitement is unreal. Thank you.
Oh, good. So would you like to say a few words before we send you off to the national semi-finals?
My hands are trembling. I don't think I was this nervous while I was presenting. I would just like to say a massive thank you to the audience, people at home watching, mom, dad, hi if you're there, to the judges, to Karen and the rest of the 3MT team who helped us, who's been with us constantly for the past 2 months, helping us polish and refine our research, and especially to all the other participants. You were amazing, and I just want to say all the best for your future research. Thank you.
Can I ask the audience all to, in their own privacy of their own homes, give a huge round of applause for everyone who presented tonight. Thank you very much. Absolutely fantastic, and an amazingly difficult job for the judges. So big round of applause for everyone. Now we have the last prize, which is the People's Choice. I'm going to hand over to Karen Clegg to award that prize. So Karen, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And congratulations to first, second and third prize winners. You all did a super job. There's no doubt about it. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you all, but particular congratulations to the three of you. And again to our judges for what was a really tough job. And you all out there, you know how tough that was because you've had to vote too. So despite the technical difficulties, I now have a result. I have a kind of envelope that I can't quite hold, but nonetheless, I know who the winner was. So I feel a kind of virtual drum roll is in order, where we announce your vote. And let's face it, there's a lot of votes because there's a lot of you. So this really matters. Without further ado, I am going to announce the winner. And we've already met that person. They already feature in the ratings that you've heard. So get ready to be impressed and amazed. And as we send her off to the national semi-finals, let's also award her the People's Choice. Zainab, well done.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much.
You are very, very welcome. So an outright winner there, Zainab Kidway. We're just delighted with your result and with the success of everyone. And so with 5 minutes to go, I've got a few things to say to you. I want to say a huge, huge thank you to a lot of people in front of you there. To you, the audience, we could do this without you, but frankly, I would feel even more ridiculous than I do now. In my bedroom, in my house, talking to myself. So to know and see that there were 400 of you makes me feel slightly less ridiculous and more seriously really proud that we're able to put something on like this at a time like this where we're really celebrating the very best of talent and taking forward some positive, fresh ideas about how we can approach really big challenges in the world. A huge thanks to Greg Dyke. Thank you for coming back 3 years running and for dealing with the technology that you weren't quite sure about. and for trusting us to see that process through. Greg, you're a delight. We're so proud to have you on board and as an ambassador and a patron of the university. Thank you again sincerely from us all. A huge thank you also to our judging panel. I realise the audience haven't had a chance to see them. You've seen photographs, but trust me, they've given up time, energy, commitment, enthusiasm, and they take back to their own institutions, so to Maastricht, to Munster, and obviously to York, and I hope to the National Trust also. And wherever Will Tricky goes on next, and I'm sure it will be great places, or maybe we'll be lucky and we'll keep him at York. But to all of you, thank you so much for your energy and your commitment and your time. And you're going to have a chance now to speak with the finalists in the back room at the party that we're going to go to next. To all the finalists, you were amazing. You really were. And Zanab, you couldn't have said it better. What a peer group to work with. You've all given each other so much support, so much help. You've helped with each other's slides. You've fine-tuned sentences. You've been incredibly generous of spirit in helping every one of you give the very best performance that you can and to refine and rethink your ideas. So thank you for being a generous and fabulous community to work with. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to the Graduate Students Association for producing the booklet that many of you will have downloaded, and if you haven't, you still can from the web pages if you want it as a memento. To Vitae, who are the organisers of the UK national final, to which Zanab will be put to the semi-final. So thank you to them. Also to the University of Queensland for allowing us to use the copyright and the whole idea of 3MT. To the Festival of Ideas team, everybody who is behind this, who really promoted 3MT as an activity that wasn't just seen inside the walls of the university, but was pushed out into the world and into York. And you've been unbelievably helpful and supportive and patient with me and the team when we ask lots of questions. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. To events and to marketing for all the work that you've done, but last but by no means least, to Michael and Steve, our amazing AV team who have made all of this evening possible. And I've had to trust you, and you've sent me a few notes and I've stuffed up a few of the things that probably you were expecting me to do, but thank you for putting the slides in the right place and making it all happen. You've been absolutely brilliant. So 1929, we're doing pretty well on time. So thank you enormously. For those of you who are going on to your evenings, enjoy your dinner, have a celebratory glass of wine. If you are friends and family of the winners and the finalists, then be really proud of them. They did a tough thing in a tough time, and we're so delighted with them all. Thank you. Everybody else, back to the party. I definitely want a glass of wine, and I'm sure all of you do too. So I'll see you in my kitchen very shortly. Thank you. Good evening. The recording will be available to everybody soon on the Festival YouTube channel. If you've enjoyed tonight, please use the hashtags. We very much hope that you'll be with the festival again, either for the remaining activities or next year, and we'd love to continue to work with you. Please use that hashtag, York Ideas. Stay safe, be well, and thank you again, and good evening. Bye-bye.